Well, before we get to your amazing podcast, and I have to say, like, when I heard about this podcast dropping on SiriusXM, I said, it makes sense. Like, everybody who's anybody in the entertainment business. So who better than to just interview people for lunch once a week on a Tuesday on
I
SiriusXM
love it.
than
Thank
you? Well, I mean, you've lived like a very, interesting, fascinating life, I feel. Like when you first got started in entertainment business, I know you started like at SNL and like David Letterman as a page. Does
Yes.
that seem like the same lifetime that we're in now? Like, do you remember that vividly, or is that just like, when was that?
Well, it is funny how many years ago that was, and so it feels like a different lifetime. But I remember it so vividly. In 1989, when I got that gig, and it was a hard job to get. The Page program was highly competitive. It was an 18-month program. You had about 3 to 4 interviews, and then you were going to be like contacted when a position opened if you got that. And I remember I was actually, I was looking for a job. It was after college, and through a friend of my father's, they had me meet a guy in the sports department at NBC. So I'm having this interview with him. I'm in a suit, a tie. I'm looking sharp. And as he's talking to me, he goes, what do you like about this? And I said, well, to be honest with you, I don't really like sports. And he goes, oh, I think there's a program that would be interesting to you. It's called the Page program. Do you know of it? I, of course, have heard of it. So he goes, let's pivot and let me have you interview there. So that was fall, and I got the call in February of that winter. And I began this thing that really it was magical. It was giving tours, which I still to this day have the funniest story, of going around 30 Rock in my uniform. I actually took my uniform. In completion, I have it in a hanging bag, which was verboten. Andy Cohen said to me the other day, because I showed it to him, he's like, oh, you stole that. I go, no, I earned that. Okay.
Seriously.
And it's like SNL 15, because that was the year that they celebrated 15 years. It was the year that Gilda Radner passed away. And then just to quickly say about like how this kind of all, the universe brings all these things together for a reason. The Today Show opened up. So you gave tours. That was like the main hub of the job. And then you had assignments that were typically 3-month assignments. The Today Show typically were girls. You had to be at work at 5 a.m. You had to, and you wrapped around 9:30 when the show was over. So I interviewed for the job. Nobody else is interviewing because nobody wants to get up that early. And I'm interviewing with one of the producers, and I'm talking to her, and I keep pointing with my finger. Okay, the learning curve, and she goes, you got the gig. Nobody was interviewing for it, but I'm just going to give you a little advice. Stop pointing. So I stopped pointing, and my job was basically every morning to set up the green room, welcome the talent, have the talent sign release forms, get them to makeup, get them into the studio on time, bring them out of the studio, and then make sure they got downstairs. The summer of '89, first of all, I had so much fun. I would get there. I had great stories with Shelley Winters, where she was like, she had trouble walking, so she was in a rolly office chair. So I was rolling her to like makeup, and we were crashing into walls, and she's like yelling and laughing. I had Betty Davis. It was iconic because Betty Davis was being celebrated that night at Lincoln Center, and she started the day at the Today Show, and she really dug me. And her assistant, this beautiful woman, Catherine, said, she really likes men. And so she was smoking the ashtrays. She goes, why don't you go into her dressing room? When I walk in, she has one leg on the ground and one leg positioned high up on the wall, and her dress is hiked up. I mean, she was like 88 at the time, fully made up as Betty Davis. I ran out of the room, but the woman was fantastic, so much so that they asked me to be, because I would work the floor on Letterman, which was a coveted spot. So you basically were between the audience and Letterman's desk, and had to make sure that nobody like went on, on the stage. Which one time I actually got a little bit aggressive with someone, and Letterman in his opening remarks talks about this page who almost took this guy out. So it was so many moments like that I felt we would work on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. We'd go out. We met, a ton of people. And I really believe, and then I left and I moved to LA and then started that chapter in my life. And that foundation plus my restaurant background, I just feel that was maybe one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life, is what I'm trying to say.
Wow. Were you like, did you get starstruck like at that time, like when you were seeing all these people, or were you just like, I get it. These are, we're all humans.
No. I mean, I got starstruck. I mean, Dolly Parton hosting SNL, like that was a big moment. Because you're in such an intimate place. So that job put me in rooms. So like, it's so funny because when you were a Page and Brandon Tartikoff was running the company at the time, you, during these very big executive meetings, you were in the room and the highest level executives were, and the executives right behind them were not. So you'd be like, excuse me, can you wait over here? And you'd shut the door and you'd be in the room because you were listening and you were just getting anything that they needed. So you were always the fly on the wall. And I was always starstruck. I mean, I walked Phyllis Diller down and I walked through like the 30 Rock lobby and like all these people were around, but I knew to sort of like walk with that, like how you walk a celebrity where you're just in front of them, just blocking them. And she says, oh, you knew how to do that. Like you knew how to do that. And like, I just caught the tail end of so many great people. And with the Betty Davis story, so she was on Letterman, and Letterman shot at 5:30 right next door to Live at 5, which was a local New York news with Sue Simmons, if you kind of can put it all back together in the 80s. And Audrey Hepburn was on that day. So I found myself standing literally between Audrey Hepburn and Betty Davis as they spoke to each other. And I said, you just can't. Like, when is this ever going to happen? So I always left with so many stories from the Today Show that by the end, that August, September, September, my gig was up. It was a 3-month gig. And everybody wanted to interview for the job then, because I would always come up happy and like, oh my God. And the day I was leaving, Jane Pauley, and I used to really run scripts for Jane Pauley in the morning, back and forth. And it was around 6:40 in the morning, and she's sitting behind the desk and she's putting her lipstick on. And she goes, Bruce, I hear you're leaving. Today is like your last day. And I said, yes, I am. And, it was emotional. And she goes, if you want, I would love to write a letter of recommendation for you. Unsolicited. And I said to her, thank you, but, why, Miss Pauley? Like, all I did was get, muffins and get people to make up. And she's like, it's not what you did, it's how you did it. And that has stuck with me my whole life when it comes to just my life, how I live my life and work.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, where does that, because you were also working at the Palm, like at this time, right? Like around, so where, and like the family business. So where does this work ethic, a lot of people could just say, it's my family's restaurant. Let me just, just despite the fact that you were interested in entertainment, but you didn't take the easy road. You kind of were working. Where does that work ethic come from?
Well, I think because when I was working at the Palm, one of the things that I always brought to my work was I was part of the team. So there was nothing above. And that was I think my nature. B, it was also instilled and expected from my parents that, okay. And when I went into the restaurant business, which I didn't know was going to be such a big chapter in my life, I thought, okay, this is just a means. I needed to make money. I needed to my parents expected that. And I earned the respect of the employees that I was working with, the waiters, the busboys, the dishwashers, because I did everyone's job with them. I was never the spoiled kid that came in and said, you work for my dad, screw you, I'm here, I'm not there. And I think it just was expected. And we were in the service business. I know what service is, which is, I think, bleeds into what is happening in my life now in regard to Lunch with Bruce and the ability to do this. I understand service. I respect the service business. And so, I didn't bring attitude.
No, you didn't. Do you miss the Palm? Like, I know you've moved on from it as of last year, I think it was. Like, do you miss it?
Well, it was a complicated, very bad ending of a 94-year family business. So I'm proud of I'm proud of it in so many levels. And I had to mourn it because it was certainly the great patriarch in our family and the co-founder's family. I don't miss it, to be more, very clear about it. I don't miss it. I'm happy it's not in my life anymore. It's not what it was. So I don't miss what happened to it and where it landed, because it's just, the palm just doesn't exist. It's not, it can never be what it was because the families aren't involved, the culture's not there. I don't miss it because I always wondered, how was this chapter going to end? It ended poorly. It ended with typical sort of, I think, greed and mismanagement, and all of us who worked and gave so much of our heart in it, all the people that I worked with and I respected, you know, yet again, the servers, you know, we there was a big loss. But it also, in COVID happened, so that gave me time to reflect. And I feel free. I feel like, you know what, this is why I think other things are going on right now, because it was time for that to end. I wish it had ended different. It didn't, but I remember it gave me so much and such a skill set that I will always be very grateful. And I love the tradition that my great grandfather and this other gentleman started this business, and for 94 years it helped and gave people livelihoods and sent people's kids to school, and our customers celebrated anniversaries and weddings and bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and divorces and deaths and everything, you know, and business deals is fun.